Morgan. How are you?
Hi,
Welcome to
Lauren.
RDU on Stage. If you are just joining us, I'm Lauren Van Hemert from RDU on Stage, and this is Morgan Sills, the executive producer of Judson Theatre Company in Pinehurst in the Sandhills, and we're going to be talking all about the theater in that area. In a little bit. But Morgan, welcome and thank you for joining me on the Field Trip Friday.
It's a pleasure to see you.
It's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you since last March. My last one of my last interviews, I think it may have been my last interview, was at Judson Theatre Company interviewing Amanda Burse and Teresa Gansel for The Odd Couple, the female version of The Odd Couple. So we'll talk about that in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about you before we get into the theater. You were born and raised in Moore County. Were you a theater kid there? Were you
Yes,
always in?
I was a child performer. There are performances that I gave that I don't remember because I was so young. I would say that I started to take it seriously around 14 or 15. I got myself an agent in Wilmington. I earned my first check as an actor. And after college, I never looked back. I moved straight to New York. And yes, I was very much a theater kid.
I love that. So you toured the country. I love the show Forever Plaid. I've seen it a couple times. You toured the country performing in Forever Plaid and then transitioned to producing. What I find interesting about this is so many producers now in New York are corporate people. They're not actors. They're corporations or they're real estate developers or they're business people. So, what did you learn performing, touring, stage managing that has informed how you approach producing?
Well, first going back, let me just say how thrilled I am to hear that you love Forever Plaid. Last fall of 2019, I directed the 16th production of it that I've been involved in. Now that I'm too old to be in it and I don't perform anymore, I direct it and I love it because I get to revisit that wonderful show it's about so many things. It taught me a lot because of the touring nature of it. It's just been good luck for me. It's the show that I got my equity card with a production contract national tour of that show. I've worked in casinos, I've worked in summer stock, I've worked in regional theater doing Forever Plaid. So it always came back to me. I played all four of those roles. I've understudied all four of those roles in other productions where I was the cover of the swing. And it's just been a wonderful good luck charm in my life. Producing coming from performing, the way that happened really was in New York. My first production company, when I was still an actor, was called Wildcat Theatricals, and they were equity showcases, these little shows. And our idea for that was to do relatively obscure plays, and because you want to do something in the marketplace that nobody else is doing and give them another New York showing. So we did My Three Angels, Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, My Friend Leonard Gersh's Miss Pell is Missing, a bunch of shows. And during that time, I would be in the shows acting, and my friends would say, Morgan, you're good at the acting, that's fine, but you know what you're really, really good at? You're good at the producing. You're good at getting everything together and then making sure the show gets on and everything like that. And I realize now, looking back, especially between myself and Daniel Haley, who's the artistic director of Judson Theatre Company, between the two of us, there's really not a job in the professional theater that either he or I that we haven't done. On stage, backstage, in the wings, front of house, press, marketing, wherever. One of us has done it and has done it at a professional level. Now, Broadway, a lot of the time, your first shows on and off Broadway will be in a financial capacity, because it takes so much money, not just to capitalize the show, but to operate it. So some of my producing credits in New York are primarily financial, where I found the money. And then others, I've been lead producer and, at the head of the table with all the people, looking at you. What do we do, Morgan? That kind of thing. And both of those situations have their pluses and minuses. I love producing in New York. Acting, to me, I always had to grind my gears a little bit, just to get through it. But producing somehow just comes so much more naturally. I love the family of friends that it's made. Every show, is a family if you're lucky. And to be able to give people work, to give really talented people a little bit of work, and to see the little change that comes over the audience when they've seen a good show, that has meaning to me as well.
Absolutely. I feel like something we have in common is the love of the golden age of musicals and theater history. As a person who has researched and studied theater history, can you ever imagine anything that has impacted the arts the way that COVID has?
Not without going back, well before your lifetime or mine. But the truth,
Shakespeare.
the truth of that situation, though, is to turn it around and look at it from an inspiring, viewpoint, that the theater has always managed to see its way through. And that sort of is the prize that I keep my eyes on. It was really tough for Judson Theatre Company, because we had to shut down The Odd Couple in March at the worst possible time, which is after rehearsals had begun. Everybody's already there. The ads are running. The set is built. The costume, the money is spent. So we had to shut down after we'd started rehearsals, but before we opened. So financially, the impact was as if we had done a large scale show that hadn't sold a single ticket. And it dug a bit of a hole, that took with it a fair amount of what we had built up over the past several years when things had gone really, really well. So it was a big setback. And you just have to make up your mind. Our theater company's not going to go under. We're going to keep going. And you just say that and just keep making the shows, because not everybody knows how to make the show. So that's your obligation in the larger context of the whole world, to do the thing, that brings the most joy, pleasure, happiness, to do your little part for the world, to make the world a better place. And that's what we try to do with our shows.
And the amazing thing to me, as we've navigated this pandemic, is seeing how much people are leaning on the arts to get through it, whether it's reading or listening to music or watching live streams of productions, watching Broadway HD. I feel like people are really leaning on the arts to get through this, and missing the arts. So it's kind of nice to see, I think, this
Absolutely.
appreciation.
And This Only Child, who is also an inveterate list maker, is absolutely fine. I actually started a series on my personal blog on morgansills.com called Shows for Someday, where I am taking a closer look at these scripts that I will probably never, ever get to produce, but interesting shows that I think maybe deserved a little bit more attention from the past. And they're either by very famous playwrights, or they got, a bum deal on Broadway or whatever. And that's been really fun. All these scripts, I have a pile, that I've been intending to read. Well, now I have the time. Movies and music, the same thing. Now I have the time. So it's been wonderful creatively like that. And my friends are just a phone call away, and they're creative too. So I'm doing okay.
I'm so glad to hear that, because it's been rough. You are in New York. That's where you're sheltering in place. what is the temperament right now in New York? Because I feel like so many of us are looking to Broadway and New York theater as the benchmark for how and when theater is going to reopen. So what's happening in New York in the arts community, and what's the temperament there?
Well, New Yorkers can survive anything. I have been here for hell, 9/11, and high water, Hurricane Sandy. And New Yorkers can, and the blackout, so many things. And New Yorkers can survive anything. They're used to their proximity issues with people in New York just because people are in apartments and people are always up on other people. So the compliance rate with mask wearing and things like that here is actually rather high. The worst thing you can do as a New Yorker is take up somebody's time unnecessarily or be inconsiderate of the group, unnecessarily. And so I think a lot of people are vigilant, they're cautious, but real New Yorkers are staying here. It's interesting, Lauren, because I have had friends who have called it a day and said, I've got to leave for now. And I understand and respect that decision. Just as I can't imagine the grief that my friends who have had, close relatives die in a matter of days, how they're getting through that. I can't imagine. But New York is and always will be the great testing ground. Economically, Broadway's got to come back because New York can't come back without Broadway, and the United States can't come back without New York. The economic impact of Broadway is such a major, and off Broadway is such a major driver of all the things around it, the restaurants, the hotels, the parking, all the businesses that keep a show going, marketing, press, advertising, legal, everything. So I think everybody here really wants to get back. They also want it to be safe for the audience. And there's just that who's going to be the first one, who can afford to be the first one if you have to run at 60% of capacity on Broadway just to break even. And the Broadway audience is 63% or so tourist. Who's going to be the first one?
Well, and I know there was a lot of buzz that Hamilton, announced that they'll come back in July 2021, which is optimistic and hopeful, and maybe it'll happen. And then on the other side of the coin, you have giant shows like Frozen and Mean Girls, which will not be reopening when Broadway does come back. And I think that's kind of shocking to people when you see an institution like Frozen say, "We're closing. We're not coming back after this thing is over," or a success like Mean Girls. Mean Girls has been fairly successful, and they'll go on the road and they'll tour, and as will Frozen. But I think seeing those kinds of shows really shows how vulnerable Broadway is. I from my standpoint anyway.
And every time that happens, that's at least 100 people out of work.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the people, in the actual theater, at the actual building, and not the people around who work on the show. It's devastating. Shows open and close all the time, but this somehow feels different, especially for the shows that were in previews, or like Mrs. Doubtfire got through just a few previews, or like Plaza Suite, I think, was supposed to start previewing either that night or the next night. They were loaded in, and then they had to shut down. It's a lot to think about.
Six had their opening night that night, and then everything's shut down, which is crazy.
And it extends beyond Broadway to things like 21 is shut down permanently. If you ever thought you would see New York without 21, how many old movies do they all go to 21? Mm-hmm. And it's just, all you can do is think about the future and what you can do to make it better. And that's where you have to keep your head. What can I do to be safe, to keep those I love safe, and to make it better going forward. What's going to be prudent? Producers make these decisions. They're decisions with similar weight all the time. It's just that this is a really, really big one, and it's happening to everybody at the same time and not just one show.
As people are leaving New York, and we've read a lot of articles about performers who have left the area, even performers who have left Los Angeles, because it's just cost prohibitive to live there if you're not working. Is that to the advantage of a place like North Carolina, where we have so many professional people from New York living and working as it is? Is this going to be somehow a silver lining for places like North Carolina, for theaters like Judson? Are people going to come here and perform and make art here from these bigger areas?
I think regional theater has been headed for another renaissance anyway. As cities grow and change, for each city that has a regional theater, each town that has a regional theater, to have its own subset of local hire professionals, regional area professionals, that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. I mean, in the 80s, when I was growing up in North Carolina as a child performer in the 90s, you'd go to Wilmington and shoot Matlock or do a movie or something like that. In theater, it can be the same thing, that it's not all New York and LA. I mean, we get most of our actors from New York and Los Angeles for Judson Theatre Company, but we pick up local professionals there in the North Carolina, in the Piedmont region. And hey, while I'm on here, we actually do, that's one of the pandemic things that we want to do. If you are a local hire professional in North Carolina, just send us your resume to jtcstaff@gmail.com, for we are looking for TDs who can build, wardrobe people, stage managers, actors, union and non-union. We would love to hear from you and build up our North Carolina pool. New York, the thing about New York is that regional theater and tours and Broadway, they all cast from here.
Mm.
So a lot of the time, that may be different with streaming auditions, really so much more than ever before. But those shows cast from here. And so I think it may be that you do still have to get local and be in New York to get work out of town. If that really changes, that'll be interesting, because so much theater really does depend on the energy that actor brings into the live room. You can get a sense of it if you're auditioning on Zoom, but it's not the same as having them there in the room with you, when you can really pick up on their vibe at an audition.
Yes, yes. Nothing like live. There's just nothing like it. You are the co-founder of Judson Theatre Company. It is located in Pinehurst, not a very far drive away. So talk to me about the arts community in Pinehurst and why you saw the need to start a professional theater there.
Well, we just had our 9th anniversary on January the 19th. 9 years we've been around. I co-founded Judson Theatre Company with Daniel Haley, who is our artistic director, as I mentioned, and we were both performers. We met here performing in New York, and over the course of years, we were talking about what would it be like if we had a theater company of our own. We each wanted, and it's like, well, we should, do this together, since we both kind of want the same thing. Okay. And we had both toured a lot. And so we knew our way around all these different towns around America. And we talked about, well, what if it were here? What if it were there? Because one of the big rules is you'd never start a theater in a place that isn't a destination town. And so we're kicking this around, one day at dinner or something in a restaurant. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm from a destination town. Pinehurst is a destination town. because it is, and it's becoming one more and more as the area is changing. The population there in Moore County is over 100,000 now. The USGA is going to pump a couple $1 billion into the economy when they build their new facility there. The military presence from Fort Bragg has increased people who choose to live there in Pinehurst and Moore County. And so what we did was, back in 2012, we looked at the demographics and realized that it was a bullseye to the traditional theater goer demographic, and yet they didn't have, a small regional theater there. So we made Judson Theatre Company the size of organization that we thought the area could sustain. And then we thought about, well, we don't want to be our product, our shows. We don't want to be doing exactly what other theaters nearby are doing. We don't want to be redundant in the marketplace because that's boring. So inspiration hit in terms of the theater building, the beautiful old theater building that's right there in the center of the village of Pinehurst. Mm-hmm. If you go in the theater building, which has been chopped up into retail now, but you can still tell it was a theater. They have memorabilia on the walls from when it was a theater. And they used to have winter stock. Now, this is when Pinehurst was really, truly a sleepy southern town. And you'll see that they had professional, star-driven winter stock at the theater building in Pinehurst. So 10 weeks, 10 plays from February to April, with everybody from Margaret Truman to George Grizzard to Iggy Wolfington to whoever. In all these wonderful old titles, Send Me No Flowers, Tea and Sympathy, The Time of the Cuckoo, things like that, The Tender Trap. So I thought, well, maybe we could do a modern version of that. And so in 2012, we started. Our first season was Love Letters, starring Tab Hunter. We got him back on stage for his first acting. It was his last acting role and the first acting role he had done on stage in 30 years. And then Joyce DeWitt from Three's Company, Janet. The two of them knew each other, but I knew them separately. But what was so cute was that in my separate conversations with each of them, they asked for the other because the offers were kind of going at the same time. And so we started off with Love Letters, and that set the bar really high. And then the next show in the first season was Tuesdays with Maury with Jamie Farr, which he had done in Canada, but we were the American premiere of his performance as Maury. And we've just kept going since then with little tweaks and things like that. We knew that the most important thing about a theater company's first season is that they have a second season. So we didn't kick it all into gear without the capital in place to get through 3 good years or 5 bad years. We were ready to keep it rolling for a while. And the area has come to really appreciate it. We are a professional theater in service to the community. We've been bringing the stars to the Sandhills since 2012. We have an education program. We do massive community outreach. We have all kinds of business partners and partnerships with other civic organizations now. So we're really a citizen of the community and not just a standalone organization. And then, as you mentioned, with the renovation of BPAC, we have this beautiful new facility, Bradshaw Performing Arts Center. We have a Broadway-sized stage, 40 by 60, a 600-seat theater that's brand new. We were the first theatrical production in there last fall with Witness for the Prosecution, fall of 2019. And there's also a black box space, the McPherson Theater, and then 2 outdoor venues, Evelyn's Courtyard and the McNeil Woodward Green. And we are looking forward to bringing different kinds of shows now that we have a variety of spaces.
Mm-hmm. Which will be so fun to see and to come there. So the first time I came to Judson was for Love, Loss, and What I Wore. The time I was writing for Broadway World, and Alan, who was my boss-ish, we're all independent contractors, but he's the one that oversees all the regional coverage for Broadway World. He had called me and said, I want you to cover Love, Loss, and What I Wore. And I was like, do you know that Pinehurst is like an hour away from me? And I was belly aching about it. And I went, and it was such an entertaining evening. Sally Struthers from All in the Family and from many other things, but I remember her fondly from All in the Family. Kim Coles was in that production, and I wasn't very familiar with her work, but she was brilliant in that production. And it was a lot of fun to see. I was last there in March. I interviewed Amanda Burse from Married with Children and Teresa Gansel from lots of things, but from the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. You wrote so eloquently about the shutdown in Pine Straw magazine recently. Talk to me about making the decision to shut down The Odd Couple in March and how Judson, like so many other theater companies, have pivoted since.
Well, the actors arrived on a Tuesday to do press and then the blocking rehearsals Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And at the end of Fridays, I should say before I really get started on this, it helped so much that Amanda Burse and Teresa Gansel are friends of mine who I'd worked with before on other projects. And Teresa had even been had worked at Judson before. She was in our Steel Magnolias.
Steel Magnolias.
Just having friends there. But we did the 3 days of blocking and press Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And Friday night, Daniel, who directs the play and is, of course, like I said, the artistic director, Daniel came to me and he said, Morgan, we need to shut down. And, I'm the child performer in me, go on stage with a broken leg, doesn't matter how you feel, doesn't matter anything, get yourself out there and smile. I'm sort of from that school. And Daniel was like, this is bigger than that. We need to shut down. The actors will get stuck here. If they shut down transportation, it might not be safe for people in the audience or on stage or anything. If we have to the later we try to go, if we try to sweat it out, the worse it will be if we have to shut it down in the end. And so he was right, and I was wrong that one time. and so it was a Friday the 13th, actually. And so Daniel and I, we have the best friendship and co-worker relationship because we really don't argue. We tend to come to the same decision by different paths. We get along really, really well. And so I said, well, I'm the producer. I'll make the speech. And so we got everybody together at 10 o'clock the next day in the rehearsal space. And I made the speech. And here is how professional that cast, all those people are. 10 o'clock, we're shutting down. The first car left for the flight to LA at 12:45. So in that 2.5 hours, they got back to the hotel. I rebooked airline tickets. They checked out, turned in their rental car. I mean, this massive amount of work got done very quickly. And then around 4 or so, the second car with all the New York bound actors, they left for the airport. And then the people who had driven chose to stay the night and left the next morning. So we got everybody home safely, just in time. And after everybody was gone, it really hit me hard about, wow, you did the right thing. It's never so important that you should endanger people.
And it must be hard as a producer because Witness for the Prosecution was such a success that Tony nominee Alan Campbell, who lives here in Raleigh, he was in that production. Brooke North was in that production. There were lots of Triangle folks who were in that production. That was such a success. And then this one had really sold a lot of tickets because you had those stars, those people in place to make that show a success.
Yes, Witness for the Prosecution had broken our box office record. We've tripled our audience in 8 years. And some of that, you could say, well, but some of it is just the Sandhills area is growing so much. And Witness for the Prosecution had broken the box office record, and The Odd Couple was on the track to break even that record. So the financial consequences of it were really, really tough. And then after after that, after we got everything and everyone back to where it had come from, because we had to get out of the theater. The set was built, everything. Uh, we really let ourselves have some think time about how are we going to get over this financial hurdle. I've become a grant writing madman even more than I was before. There were some people who donated back their tickets. We've gotten some donations. We don't get money from the town or from the county or anything like that. But we have had some help from the Arts Council of Moore County. I sit on their board, and they've been wonderful to us. Our friends at Sandhills Community College, where BPAC is, they've been wonderful to us as well. So there's a fundraising thing that we had to sort of figure out, how are we going to do it? How does the theater company ask for money when they're not making theater, post haste? There was a lot to think about. And they're in Moore County, where they haven't necessarily always had what we're trying to do in Moore County is really not just raise the banner for Judson, but affect a sea change in the attitude about the arts, so that they're more visible and so that they're valued more. So that part has been challenging, but I welcome a good challenge. And we figured out our pivot we did in 3 ways. One is streaming productions. Just over the Christmas holiday, we had a brand new play, Yes, Virginia, by Stan Zimmerman, who was a writer for The Golden Girls and Roseanne, and Christian McLaughlin, who was a writer for Desperate Housewives, a new play, Yes, Virginia, starring Mindy Sterling from the Austin Powers movies and Arnisha Walker from Dynasty and from Nurses, a lot of shows, and a Dream Girl. She's played all 3 Dream Girls on Broadway. So that was wonderful to do a new play and do it in this new streaming format. And we took real care with it, so that it wasn't just like 2 heads. We had, the shots where they were looking at each other, the over the shoulder shots, action shots and things like that, to really push the format as far as we could. And that was a big success. We reached past that Sandhills audience. We partnered with, Laguna Playhouse. Even though we were the originating producer, we partnered with Laguna Playhouse and Stagecrafters and Millbrook Playhouse in Pennsylvania, where I sometimes direct. And they streamed it out to their audiences. So it was sort of like this ad hoc network of regional theaters pushing this new play out there. And I think it's an exciting way to get new work out there. Another prong of our pivot was radio plays. We also, at holiday time, we did Miracle on 34th Street there as a radio play on our local stations, Star 102.5 and 550 AM. Muirfield Broadcasting, which owns both of them, has been a season sponsor for us since season 3. And they just treat us so well. And I called and how about a radio play? And they're like, sure, Morgan. Oh gosh, we would love that. So it was wonderful. Another good thing about the pandemic is feeling these people that you've been in business relationships with just coming towards you with open arms, that the door isn't closed, that they're in it, they're with you, and they're happy to work together again, and that they really do believe in you. It's nice to have that as much rejection as the theater can contain. It's so nice to get an overwhelming affirmation like that. And then the third aspect was really because we wanted to stay top of mind with our audience. We've really beefed up our social media. We do every week a feature called Judson Reads on Tuesday, which is book recommendations of current and classic show business and theater related books. On Wednesdays, we have Judson Quotes, which is an inspirational quote that sort of speaks to the day from a theater person. And then Thursday, we have Judson Words, which are theater terms that our audience may or may not know because they mean something else in civilian life, and in the theater they mean, something like that. And then on Fridays, we preempted it for today, but Fridays we share with our partner Broadway Barfly, who has theater-related cocktails with the history of the show and the history of the cocktail. It's a wonderful online series, Broadway Barfly. So it just keeps us top of mind with our audience and keeps us in contact with them. I miss them so much, Lauren. It's hard to put into words, but I really do.
I know. I know. Well, and I have my kind of wall. I call it like my virtual hug of all the wonderful people that I've met and seen along the way. Sally Struthers is on the top row. My I have a really cute picture with her at Judson, and then Amanda and Teresa. That was my last interview. It's hard to believe. Um, in the article for Pine Straw, you talked about the performers getting a little nervous, the scramble for cleaning and disinfecting and keeping everybody safe. It's funny, I couldn't I couldn't find disinfectant here in Raleigh anywhere. But when I came down for that interview, right around the corner from where we had that interview was an Office Depot or Staples or something like that, and they had toilet paper and paper towels and disinfectant. Those were my souvenirs from Pinehurst after my interview that I brought back with me. But talk about, as a producer, I know Actors Equity has put so many strict rules about going back to live performance, for places like Judson that employ Actors Equity actors. As a producer, is COVID going to impact the types of productions you're able to put on stage when we do come back?
I think that'll depend on the when. As Marin Maisie once belted, you can never go back to before. So it will be different. It will be different. And I think we are just going to see where on the calendar that happens to fall. There are plenty of enterprising ways that I've seen theater companies manage it, whether it's casting a real life couple in Tally's Folly, or doing a show where the characters don't have a ton of, closeness, physical proximity. There's a world of answers to that question. We don't quite know what we're going to come back as the first show for Judson, because we want to see where on the calendar it's going to fall. And we've got to decide, we'll be taking the temperature of how willing our audience is to come back. We did the survey that I've always wanted to do. They're always like, keep the survey short or you'll lose people. Keep the survey short. And I was like, people will love that this survey is long. For once in their lives, they'll love that we're sending them a long survey. So we did this very detailed survey, was one of our pandemic projects, and we got all this wonderful information, and their safety. The safety of that audience is paramount, especially when you look at the demographics of who they are. Some of our audience are the people who are the most vulnerable in terms of COVID, and we have to keep them safe. We have to keep our actors and our crew safe. Just sidebar, one of the things that is like the hallmark of a bad producer is that they beat the crap out of their people and then they push them out on stage and expect them to deliver their A game. And you just can't do that. They've got to, not everybody has, the biggest budget in the world, but you've got to make sure that your people feel safe and taken care of and heard. So we're proceeding with caution.
That's good. That's good to know. And as you said, I think when I looked at the median age of Pinehurst, Moore County area, it's like 59 years old. That's a demographic that is in that very vulnerable category. So I was going to ask you when you think audiences will feel comfortable coming back, but it seems like you're kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of that to see when the timing is right, which I love.
Well, Broadway has said June at the earliest. They've already extended the shutdown. That most recent extension of the shutdown would be early June, would be the earliest that Broadway would come back. But yes, because on the one hand, there's the government signal saying, yes, it's okay. But I think the real signal that we're waiting for is the social signal from everybody around everybody that, hey, it's okay to go in and do this together again, because the togetherness the togetherness is really everything. Now that I'm not acting, one of my favorite things in the theater, because a lot of the time I'll be out front or whatever, is to watch spot people as they, I've never told this before, is to spot people as they go into the theater, and it'll be like, oh, I think that fish was off. Oh, why'd you have to park so far away? And then they go in and they see the play, and then you spot them coming back out of the theater, and it's like a different person. It's like a different person. And that can be, for the miracle worker, it can be that kind of lift, or it can be from, four twists of the plot at the end of Witness for the Prosecution, and they're like, whoa, they've been invigorated. That's one of my favorite things in the theater. But it's about us being together in that room and breathing the same air. And at Judson Theatre Company, it's about seeing live and in person these people that maybe you've only seen behind the glass of a TV screen or up on a movie screen, and maybe getting to shake their hand afterward or get an autograph or a picture, spending time in a smaller size theater with them and their talent. And that's what it's about. But the audience can't relax and the actors won't relax until we all know that it's safe to be there.
Well, and it's such a different kind of atmosphere. I mean, yes, you can go to DPAC here in Durham, and you can stand by the stage door and get your picture taken with whoever was in that touring production. But there's nothing like standing in an intimate space in the lobby of Judson, and you turn around and there's Sally Struthers or there's Kim Coles, and they're right there. There's no gate, there's no barricade between you. It's just person to person contact, and there's just nothing like it. So that's what I love so much about Judson, and I can't wait to come back. You were on the producing team of the Broadway revival of Mice and Men in 2014. That was filmed for broadcast at the National Theater. You also were on the producing team of the off-Broadway production of Happy Birthday, Doug, and that's streaming on Broadway HD. Do you think now, every day we're seeing new virtual productions? Broadway HD, I feel like it's probably exploded. I don't know that for sure, but I feel like that's exploded, and we're of course seeing these productions stream out of the National Theater and every theater in the country. Do you think these virtual productions hurt or help theater long term?
They're a golden opportunity for Broadway to get closer to the center of our culture than it has been since the Golden Age. Think about it, Lauren. It used to be that when new ideas would get introduced into American popular culture in the 40s and 50s, you would find them first on Broadway or in a book. That has flipped. New ideas in our culture now come mainly from television or from film or from writing on the internet. So with this streaming, it's in no way is it a substitute for live performance. Of course it's not. It's a different entertainment medium, but putting theater in the streaming box and getting it out there to every child and adult who can't come to Broadway, who doesn't live anywhere near, it's a wonderful opportunity. Streaming, the sort of on-demand aspect, breaks down the scheduling barrier. The fact that the tickets are so much cheaper breaks down the financial barrier. And then the geographic barrier that we talked about in terms of distance. So I see it only yielding good things. I know that in some ways the industry and the unions, and I'm a member of Equity and SAG-AFTRA, in some ways there's some catching up and some adjusting and some figuring out what it's going to be so that the talent is protected in terms of the revenue stream. But I think, like always, we'll get there and just work it out together. It's also a wonderful souvenir because I certainly am from the era. So many of the shows that I was in when I was acting, I have no record of, because it used to be so strict about preserving it, on what I guess would have been videotape back then, on on Kinescope. I'm so old. But now, with the latitude, it's good to have the permanent record of the show. And I think it makes people want to go and see it live. It's not a deterrent. It makes people want to go and see it live. And that thinking has changed too. It used to be that they wouldn't release the film version of a Broadway show until after the Broadway production had closed. And now you can see where that has completely flipped. The film version of Chicago, coming out when it did, has extended the life of that show on Broadway, and being the hit that it was, has extended the life of that show, is one of the things that has extended the life of that show on and on and on. So these things are good. I love that Netflix is like these 3 Broadway things, Boys in the Band and Ma Rainey and The Prom. You couldn't find 3 titles that are more different. And there they are. They're making these, Broadway versions of things for everybody to watch. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. And the budgets, when they don't have to be huge budget studio movies, that's exciting too, because it means that a greater variety of material will be seen.
Which is exciting. I mean, I love film on Broadway. I didn't love the film version as much as seeing it live, but had I not seen it live, I would have loved seeing that story come to. I love the fact that story is now available to so many people to see. Ma Rainey's the same thing. I mean, that's Chadwick's last performance. So how great is it to have that preservation of his legacy? It's really it is an interesting time, and it'll be interesting to see going forward. Before we went on air, we were talking about the Irish Rep production of Meet Me in St. Louis. It was very interesting how they used Zoom and green screens to trick you into thinking they're all in the same place. It was really exciting to watch. So it'll be interesting to see how the technology evolves. What's next for Judson Theatre Company, and how can the public, either performers or audiences, support Judson as we're looking forward to the rest of this year?
Well, the very next thing is another radio play, An Affair to Remember, and that's on Valentine's Day weekend. You can listen on the 2 Muirfield broadcasting stations, Star 102.5 and 550 AM, or you can listen on the internet on the day. Listen live at star1025fm.com. That's one of the things. You can always find out more about us through our social media. We're on Facebook and on Instagram, and our website as well, judsontheater.com, where you can donate too. And you can designate if it's a recurring contribution. There are different funds that it can go into. We just appreciate all the support that we've gotten. And live theater, with proper funding, all dreams are possible.
And just to reiterate, you want performers to email you their resumes, because you're really building up that local database of local folks. So give that email address again so people know where to find you.
Yes, it's paid acting work in North Carolina. JTC staff @gmail.com. Headshots and resumes, tech resumes. Please let us know. We would love to hear from you. And the other things we've got going on at Judson, there'll be another streaming show that I can't quite say yet because the star is not 100% secured. And then there are the plans for rolling out our regular main stage season as soon as we can, and a series of shows in the black box there, which will be a completely different kind of programming. So there are a lot of wonderful evenings with us together in the audience ahead. We just have to let a few more pages drop off the calendar until they're here.
And are you looking for original work? I know you have a stack of scripts you're reading of plays, that you may or may not produce, but are you also looking for original work, or are you looking to produce mainly those known title. Like
That's another sort of, that's a long held dream of mine that I would love to get funded, in order for it to go forward. We would need, I would love if we could have a new work series. We're not quite there yet, so hang on to those scripts. But one of the things that I do just as Morgan, is I do script consultation. People who want their scripts evaluated by a professional producer who's produced on and off Broadway. I do that, and I write up a whole sort of evaluation, and we talk on the phone, and you get a set of rewrites, and then I look at the second draft, things like that, because there is that English degree side of Morgan as well as the producer side. I also do coaching at this point, a limited number of students, auditions and repertoire and acting, general career coaching. And that's been rewarding too, because you have to be, you give so much to the people that you coach, that you teach, and then you see them get better. And there's no other feeling in the world like that.
Absolutely. And people can find you at morgansills.com. They can read your very impressive resume, list of shows. No, it is. It's impressive. And especially for script consultation, I think that's so important, because I know a lot of people are developing their new work right now. So maybe in that black box space, maybe that'll be a good space for that kind of thing. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this afternoon. I love these Field Trip Fridays. I not only get to reconnect with people I haven't seen for a while, but hopefully introduce people in the Triangle area to these theaters that are within easy drive distance, that are producing such good work. There's nothing like live theater, so I can't wait to get back to it.
Thank you for what you do, Lauren. Thank you for believing in Judson Theatre Company. It means so much. And it was an honor to be here today, truly. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Everyone, please support Judson Theatre. An affair to remember. I mean, what kind of, what better story to hang out on Valentine's Day with than that? So I love that you're doing that as a radio play. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you tuned in late, you can watch this from its entirety on YouTube or Facebook or the website over the weekend. It will live there. And everybody, just support your local theater. We need theater. It's very important. And mask up so we can get back to live, please. Morgan, stay safe and healthy in New York, and I look forward to seeing you back in Pinehurst soon.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you.
And thanks, everyone, for watching. I will see you next week. I'll announce the lineup next week, this weekend, but it's a good one. So please join us starting Monday. All right. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you soon.